Hello, hello, hello. I am Zakiya Monique, Master Relationship Strategist, Transformational Speaker, Bestselling Author, Killer Connections, and I'm also the founder of the Woman to Woman community, in which we are cultivating an atmosphere to learn, to laugh, to love, to lament, and simply put, it's a place where, as a warrior, you can come, you can sit amongst other warriors when you're tired, when you're struggling, and have someone to hold your hands up until your battle is won. Have somebody speak life into you, and then there's times when you will do the same for others. It's just amazing. Okay. Building this community is amazing. The ups, the downs, all parts of it. But ultimately, just like in a community, you input and you receive output. And so reciprocity is the key. The first 50 women, my founding members is what I call them, are $9.99 per month. Why? Because I want you ultimately to be able to work with me long term. Okay. Some of these issues that we have are deep rooted issues from 30 years, 20 years. And it amazes me how people will think that we can simply meet 4 times and just uproot all of their issues. No, we got to do the work. All right. And so if that's a place that you need, please come and join us, bit.ly/ZM woman to woman, bit.ly/ZM woman to woman. Now, upon joining, you will receive 7 hours of teaching, for instance, on rejection, how to understand it, how to deal with it when it's paired with narcissism, or why, how it impacts narcissism, rejection and cumulative grief, rejection and trauma bonds, how to overcome rejection. Why did I pick rejection first? Because there's not one person who has not dealt with some level of rejection. Okay. Then we're preparing now to tackle mother and father wounds at the time of this recording. And we're also going to have to deal with forgiveness, because there's no way that I can bring up all of this stuff and then not teach you how to forgive so that you're not stuck, right? So that you're not stuck. So if you know that you need help and you don't want to pass these wounds and the trauma and the drama down to your generations, join us, bit.ly/ZM woman to woman, $9.99. You can't beat that. I am so confident in what I provide. Not arrogant, but confident in what I provide, that you can leave at any time. I don't hold nobody. I don't want to hold nobody. Okay. So with that being said, come on, join the community, bit.ly/ZM woman to woman. Now let's get to family. Okay. Which we all, we're going to deal with this in the community as well, but we all have some level of family. And I shared something on my Facebook post about 2 weeks ago, or about a week and a half ago, that said that since 1997, 47% of families no longer have family reunions. And they said it's for one of 2 reasons. 1, because elders have passed away, or 2, unresolved issues. So it took me a little bit of time to go live about this, because I really wanted to put some thought into it, right? I wanted to really put some thought into it to say, what are really what are the issues really? And I want to give you a disclaimer. I am someone who has been the family organizer from my mother's side since 1998. And I've also been involved in planning and development and all of that on my father's side. So I speak with a close view. I'm not speaking to somebody who just show up at stuff and, no, I'm speaking to somebody who's been on all ends of the table, right? Who's been on all ends of the table. So with that being said, I want to get into what we came here to talk about today. Here's what I came up with. Yes, the elders are passing away, and it impacted, and it impacts the family greatly, because some of us never watched them light the torch. So part of the problem is we just always thought they would be here to lead the family. We never took any notes. We never looked at how things were done. We never paid attention to how things were done. And many of us don't have enough of a passion to establish a way to do things, right? And here's the thing that I want to say. Because they're gone, and that was our Mima and Pawpaw or whoever, we don't want to admit that their leadership was sometimes detrimental to our growth and development now. Right? We don't want to say that, because that was Mima and Pawpaw. And remember, I teach that multiple things can be true. So Mima and Pawpaw could have been amazing with men and women, but in our community, the further back you go, the closer you get to slavery. And so some of their mindsets and some of the things that they passed down to us now are not for our benefit. Okay. So this means that they were likely to sweep things under the rug, because slaves didn't get to confront nothing. So our elders often confront, and encourage us for the sake of family to not say nothing. I don't know about y'all. This is what happened in our family. Just don't say nothing, because that's just how they are, baby. Just don't say nothing, right? But they didn't encourage us to get help for the issues either. So, because remember, slaves didn't get to go to the counselor. They didn't. So they dealt with their issues. They coped. They just had to deal with it. Many of them sang hymns and whatever, and they just had to cope with it. And that's what they encouraged us to do for the sake of family, right? But here's what's true today. When the elders pass away, so did the notion that family can do anything to you, say anything to you, and still be family. No. Now, some family done slid over to the relative category because when it comes to me, I share my life with family. I share my kinship with relatives. I can be kin to you, but not consider you my family in terms of how I involve you in my life. But me, Mom, and Papa would have said family is family. Family is everything. But my mental health is everything. What happened to that? My mental health matters too, right? My physical health matters too. That wasn't really always factored in. We have moved out of a time where titles mean entitlement. Yes, I will honor my mother and my father, but one verse down it says they can't provoke me either. Right? Provoke thou not the child. So we are much more apt to require reciprocity now. Both sides got a responsibility, but that was not always enforced back in the day. Wasn't always enforced. Respect is no longer a one-way street. We've moved out of a time where elders meant most wise and always right. Just because you're the eldest does not mean that you're the wisest in every area or right all the time. And as we intertwine technology into our daily lives and much of what we do, it benefits us in family when the elders and youth work together and hold a mutual respect for one another. Now, I'm not talking about the disrespectful being respected. No. I'm talking about those who are responsible, accountable, and respectful being respected, not as little Johnny, as little Monique, as little this or little, no, but as John, who now has a family of his own. So the bitter, those bitter Bettys and bitter elders will still see Johnny as 9 years old and want to talk to him as such. That's not flying today. That's not flying today. We're moving out of a time where the matriarch or patriarch are the oldest members of the family who think that they don't have to plant a seed but should receive some type of flowers. How? Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but who told us that the matriarch and patriarch are the eldest? God recently asked me that. He recently asked me who said that the matriarch and patriarch were the oldest members of the family. And I couldn't answer him because I don't know. I just always thought it was, right? But he prompted me to look up the definition of matriarch, and I was outdone because the first definition said that it was a woman who is the head of the family or tribe. A woman. It did not say the oldest woman. The next definition spoke to age, but still never said the oldest. It said an older woman who is powerful within a family or organization. Here's the thing. God created the family unit, in my view, to be one of the most powerful units behind marriage, which is why the enemy constantly attacks and brings division and discord and damage, etc. This means that God chooses the leader, and if we pay attention, the leader is not always the oldest. Why? Because many of the elders are stubborn and rebellious because of the pain that they've endured, and they refuse to change or allow God to shape them into the leader that he desires them to be. So he will raise up a leader who is subject to his shaping and molding. Now, I asked God to show me this in his word, and he whispered, Joseph. He whispered, Joseph. And I was like, shut up. Jacob was very much alive when Joseph went through hell, remained solid, and saved all 60 plus 70 members of his family because of God's positioning. God uses whom he pleases, but bitter Bettys will say, I ain't listening to little Johnny. He can't tell me nothing. I'm older than him. Yep, and we see why you're not leading the family. Just saying. Now, many of the older members of the family expect to be appreciated for doing absolutely nothing for the family. Some of them even cause the discord because they messy. I'll say it. Some of the older members of the family are some of the messiest members, unhealed members, traumatic members, dramatic members of the family, but expect to be appreciated and celebrated for doing absolutely nothing for the family. Now, here's the thing. If we celebrate you for being 60, 70, 80 years old, that's called a birthday celebration. That's not a celebration for a matriarch. That's a birthday celebration. How do you expect flowers and you ain't planted no seeds? Or better yet, how do you expect flowers and you planted foul seeds? rotten seeds. Some folks just waited for their turn to be in charge so they can be served and never had any intentions of serving. And the youth of today are not having it. They're just not. So those are just some of the issues that came with the elders passing away. Now let's shift to the unresolved issues. Now, earlier I said I didn't want to get ahead of myself. Well, here's one of the biggest issues plaguing families: the church, the workplace, the home, the community: generational diversity. Generational diversity. I'll use my mother's side as an example. Now, my grandmother and grandfather had 11 children. Those 11 had 42 children from 1958 to 1996. And baby, it just tripled from there. Okay. When my grandmother passed away at 84 years, she had and saw 5 generations evolve under her. So when the family first came here in 1969, it was small, cohesive, and everybody could fit in the living room of my grandmother's house. There were only 3 generations, including my grandparents, but eventually there started to be like 2 or 3 babies born a year. Then that started tripling. So now it's to the point where we have 6 and 7 and 8 babies born a year, right? Now we need a hall. We need a hall, and not even a small one. We need a hall for half or a quarter of us, right? But what does this mean? Well, the further away from slavery, the more freedoms that have been experienced. And this has pros and cons, but here's what I mean in the way of behavior. The builders, those are our great-grandparents or grandparents, right? From about 1920s to 1943, they were born. They're quiet. They go along, get along. Even if they don't like it, they support it because it's family. They don't speak up for themselves. They go to the Lord in prayer and they hope. They tend to avoid hard conversations that are required for healthy relationships, and they taught their children to do the same. Remember, they're closer to slavery. Slaves didn't confront. They did what they were told, right? They had what happens in this house stays in this house type of mentality, right? So that was 1920s to 1943. Then we have the baby boomers. That's our first major set of retirees, especially from the auto industry, right? And so they were the hired to retire. They stayed at a job no matter how they were treated. A lot of them stayed in marriages no matter how they were treated or whatever, because that's what you did. You didn't leave, right? They saw and endured a lot, and they had little to minimal outlet. So many of them leaned on adverse coping strategies like drinking, crack cocaine, heroin, food, promiscuity, etc. Hence, that firstborn baby was not always belonging to the husband, but I digress because, hey, it happens. But, they were taught to sweep stuff under the rug and suffer in silence, not realizing if you keep sweeping stuff under the rug, you're going to trip. All right, let's move on. They taught their children to go after better, be smarter, because they had so many regrets, right? And they forced us into independence because oftentimes they were still living their life. Mama got to have a life too. And they left us at home to figure it out. Or they let us outside for 9 hours. And we had to figure out what to do with a ball, a rope, and some garbage pail kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, we just got a ball, a rope, and some garbage pail kids, and we got to stay out here for 9 hours, and a water hose, because don't keep running in and out of my house. So we drank from the water hose, went to free lunch, because we didn't want to get caught in the house, because we had to stay there, right? And if you had to stay in the house, that means you had to work. We don't want to do that. And it was hot in the house, because very rarely did you have central air, just that box fan in the window that your grandma cut off when she said the Lord was doing his work outside raining. So yeah, you about to be real hot. Anyway, so these parents were either working multiple jobs, hanging out, on crack, whatever. We always ended up at grandma's house, whatever it was. Okay, that's 1944 through 1963. Those are those parents. Okay. Gen X, 1964 through 1980, watched our parents and grandparents suffer in silence and decided that since speaking up was considered to be disrespectful, depending on who you spoke to, we might not say nothing, but we found a way to protest, and that's called absence. Don't believe me? Look at who's absent from the community, from the church, from the family events. Gen X, because listen, we are not in favor of this. We're not in favor of that. We respectfully voted against it. We told you how we felt in a very respectful way. You still doing what you want to do. So guess what? We ain't coming and we ain't paying. Oh, well. Many of us saw the impacts of drinking and hard drugs and other negative vices. And because we didn't have any other coping mechanisms, we sometimes used them too. We sometimes use them too. Others found other ways through the development of technology, which made learning easier. So we use education to get away from the drama and the trauma and all of that. So instead of coping with crack cocaine and coping with weed and coping with things like that, some of us cope through learning. So we said, you know what, this is going to be my way to get up out of here. That's the Gen X's, right? Okay. And that's from 1964-ish to 1980-ish. Okay. Then came the millennials. And this is where the shift happens because remember, technology is coming. There's a lot of things that are coming that shift the way of the world, right? And so while we're shifting the way of the world, now we're having the millennials, right? That's why they call millennials and not Gen Y, but they're really Gen Y. So that's 1981 to 1997-ish. Well, as Gen X, wanted their kids to have a better life, and some of us sheltered them from some of the things that we saw and endured or whatever. What we didn't realize is that we didn't always have balance. Right. We didn't always have balance in the things that we sheltered them from, because some of those things, some of the things that we sheltered them from and the development of technology, it robbed them of those experiences. Right. Because when we was outside for 9 hours, we had to do what? Use our creativity. So many of us are creative. Many of us can think of things. Many of us can lay out plans. And some folks under us can't do that. They can't start from scratch because they're like, what do I do? They need somebody to get the ball rolling for them. They can't create a plan from scratch a lot of times. Not everybody, but a lot of times. And so what happened is, the Gen Y don't always know how to handle things or how to properly invest their expectations. So they kicked in the door like, yeah, no, that stuff you did to my baby boomer grandma or my Gen X mama, that ain't flying with me. I want to know where the money going. I want to know who over it. Don't tell her to bring the potato salad. She got dirt under her fingers and roaches at her crib, etc. And when they were, they wanted to be in charge, people was like, wait, what? We don't want them in charge. Because they came in and was like, bah! They were brutal. They were harsh. They were straightforward because they had been waiting for their chance. They had been waiting for their chance to talk to Bitter Betty. They had been waiting, right? And then there's Gen Z. So just imagine how they raise their children, because some of the things are caught and some things are taught. So Gen Z feel like they should walk in the door and be the CEO. I'm going to be over the money. I'm going to be over this. I'm going to be over that. But they are the most, and you can challenge me on this if you want to. This is just how I feel. Gen Z is the most emotionally fragile generation I have experienced yet. And I mean, they one fine frog hair away from breaking down and crashing out. They can't take nothing. Emotional resilience on 000, vocational confidence on 1,000. They want to walk in the door and be the CEO, but baby, as soon as something happens, they just break down and fall straight out. Now imagine all of them being in a family meeting. How do you speak to them? Builders hardly communicate. Gen Z sitting next to each other texting and don't talk to each other, but will text and interpret disrespect and respect differently. This is the first time in history that we've had 4 generations in the workplace, in the church, in the community, and sometimes in the home. Look at the church. Old school church had 3 services all day on Sunday. Baby, listen. Gen Z will be present if they underage and forced by their parents, but they would rather watch online. Gen Y is leaving after about an hour and a half, okay? If they select in-person option. Gen X might not show up for none of it. So when it comes to unresolved issues, we clearly are in the "we are not our ancestors" movement. Some believe differently when it comes to religion and spirituality. Some have watched their grands and mothers be disrespected, disregarded for years. And like I said, they've been waiting on their chance to get Bitter Betty, because you ain't going to do that to me, boo. Counseling is just now really being embraced. So we have been doing this or trying to do this resolution with no tools or in the same brokenness that the problem was created. The younger generation don't trust many of the older generation because, baby, look at your life. You ain't no example. See, gone are the days to do as I say and not as I do. Baby, look at your life. How you going to tell me about something? Look at you. You a whole mess. And look at your kids. They are too. And so sometimes they miss the message because they're looking at the messenger. I could go on, but here is my truth. What we're now seeing in families, in communities, in churches, in different places is a result of our work and preparation or lack thereof. This is what happens when you do not prepare or pivot for the shifts. As things change, we must change to some degree too. It's like driving. You can be on one freeway and have multiple speed limits, right? You can't just keep doing 70 when the signs say bring it down to 45 for construction. You can't just keep doing 70 when they say bring it down to 55 because they got residential areas on both sides of the freeway. Sometimes those changes require us to involve some things that we might not be comfortable with personally. Because as the world evolves, spirituality does, sexual orientation does, household roles do, and other areas change. While we may not incorporate this in our homes and personal life, we have to also respect at the same time that there may be those who adopt something different for their lives than we have. Because remember, this is a group dynamic. It's a group dynamic. So it's not always subject to your way. People say to me, you're a little bit of an enigma as a Christian, because I'll get on here and say, I believe in the Bible. If you don't, that's okay. Most people feel like, oh, no, it's not okay, because that is the truth. Listen, that is your truth. That's the truth that you govern your life by. That don't mean somebody else govern their lives by that truth. And they have a right to that. I'm a believer in your choices, your consequences. Okay? And so if you live your life and get to the end of your life and find out the Bible was the truth and you didn't embrace it as true, baby, your choices, your consequences. If you get to the end of your life and find out the Bible wasn't truth and you didn't use that as your truth and whatever you adopted was your truth, your choices, your consequences. But some of us, need to learn to respect people's decisions for their own personal life without seeing it as an offense of our own. And sometimes we can't do that. So when we have somebody grow up in our family, we all grew up Baptist, we all grew up apostolic or whatever we grew up, and then we get this one person that decides they want to be a Muslim, we take that as an attack. So what you're saying, we wrong? They didn't say you was wrong. They didn't say you was wrong. Right for me don't mean wrong for you. It just means right for me. Or not right for me don't mean wrong for you. It just means not right for me. And we have to learn how to deal with that. Respect people's decisions. No matter how old they are, respect their decision. Your choices, your consequences. Embracing our differences will help prevent some of these issues, but we surely can't resolve anything until we identify them, have some difficult conversations, and balance the old mindsets with the new, and learn to value each group member that's willing to contribute to the overall growth and development and enhancement of the family as equal. It can't be big eyes and little U's all the time. And us bullying, that's not flying. It's not flying anymore. See, back in the day, you had your Jezebels. And because your grandma said, don't say nothing to her because that's just how she is. You had your pedophiles that sat up and looked all at you and it just, he ain't going to touch it. Don't worry about it. Now, we're not accepting that. We're not accepting that. We're requiring more, better, higher level. And that's the problem. That's why there are unresolved issues, because you ain't going to talk about why he in that back. Why he back there and y'all want the kids by him, because y'all ain't never dealt with the fact that he a pedophile. Deal with it. Don't try to hush it and shush it, because when you hush it, it causes the atmosphere for more to happen. Now, we don't want to talk about that, though. Let sleeping dogs lie. Wake that dog up if it means my healing, right? And that's where we are now. There's some people I'm not getting ready to honor. I am not. This is just me. I'm not going to honor the life of somebody who dead and sleeping in a grave at the expense of somebody walking around here now, smoking crack cocaine, drinking, hurting because of what that person did to them. But you want me to be quiet and not say nothing because it might dishonor them. They ain't here. And even if they was here, you did it. So now you want me to act like you didn't? No, you did it. And if you don't own it and get it right, then, oh well. However it come out, it come out. Because you should have dealt with it. But it's a lot of families that got secrets and sweeping stuff under the rug and all that type of stuff. And now that the younger generation's out here, they're like, You ain't gonna keep hurting my mama. You ain't gonna keep talking about this. You ain't gonna keep no. So I just wanted to come on and just kind of shed some light on some background issues, because we often talk about, oh, it's unresolved issues. Oh, it's elders. Oh, it's the elders. Somebody said, good morning. This is good and necessary to embrace, respect one another, yet deal with the dirt under the rug. Because if we don't deal with what's under the rug, we're going to keep tripping. How long you think you're going to put something under a rug before you trip over that rug? Shoot, you can trip over a rug without putting nothing under it. You see what I'm saying? But my point is, we haven't dealt with the issues, but we want to say it's because the elders passed away. No, some of us knew them elders was going to pass away at some point. That ain't the issue. That ain't the issue. The issue is the fact that we was quiet for them elders because they were quiet. Like I said, the further back you go to slavery, the more they dismiss pedophiles. The more, because who you think they slept with? I asked somebody that one time. I said, "What you think the slaves was like? Excuse me, master, I want to go down there and hit old girl." No, they hit each other. They hit each other. This is why the older you get, the further back to slavery you get, they don't see nothing wrong with the uncle touching somebody. They don't see nothing wrong with the auntie touching somebody. They don't see nothing wrong with it. Why? Because that's what they did. That's what they did. That's what they endured. That's what they saw. Right? So when you have a great-grandfather touching a granddaughter or whatever, am I saying it's right? Absolutely not. But to them, It was a way of life. The further you get back to slavery, it was a way of life, right? And now it doesn't serve us well. There are some things that my grandmother, in all of her glory, my grandmother was an amazing woman to me, but there are some things that my grandmother taught me that do not work for me today, do not work for me at all. Didn't even work for her, to be honest with you. But I had to get away from the fact that grandma not here and I just want to believe all the good things about her. I had to get away from the fact that, I don't have to have one truth about my grandmother. More than one thing can be true. I had to get away from the fact that my grandmother was perfect. No, some of the things she taught me, I had to disassociate. I had to disassociate who I was getting that information from, because while I loved and trusted her, that information wasn't working for me. Some of us will accept something because of who said it. Hold up, is it working? Because if it's not working for your life, I don't care who said it, you better get away from it. Turn it loose. As they said, turn it loose, baby, because it's not working for you, right? Sitting in a marriage that because somebody told you it was a sin to divorce, you better get in that book for yourself. If you believe in the Bible, get in there for yourself and have a relationship with the Lord for yourself. Because people told me, oh, if you divorce, baby, that's you. You go ahead on. My choice is my consequences. Your choice is your consequences. But what I'm not going to do, somebody told me divorce wasn't an option. And then I look up and a few years later, they was divorced. Baby, you better watch what people tell you. Get in the book for yourself. And you ain't got to hear it from nobody. You can hear it straight from the Lord. Because when the Lord told me, green light, I didn't care what nobody said. Because what I knew was that I had entered into that myself. I had entered into that myself. Now, the Bible says what God has joined together. I don't even know why I'm going this way, because I wasn't talking about this. But what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. He didn't say nothing about what Zakiya joined together. He didn't say nothing about what you joined together. And sometimes we will get in something under our own energy, out of pride, out of impatience, out of fear. We would just marry somebody because we don't want to be like our bitter Betty auntie at 65. And we would get with somebody and we would be like, Lord, this is not what you said. This is not. But see, back in the day, they would stay. This is why they were old and mean and resentful and bitter and end up sleeping in 2 different rooms and didn't like each other and didn't travel and passed all this foolishness down to their kids, because they were not supposed to be together in the first place. And marriage is about more than just shacking and lacking and laying and playing. Marriage is about purpose. And so therefore, if you marry Amy and Jeremy marry each other, they supposed to be married. Their purposes will do this. Right? Because we have individual purposes and then our purposes come together for this. But when Amy marries Robert, this is what happens. Sometimes this will happen. They don't even get close enough, but then this happens. See the difference? Don't go together. You know how I know? Look at the marriages around you. God's hand on anything will bear fruit. Anything that don't bear fruit is out of there. He cursed it by, look at the fig tree, right? If the marriage ain't building nothing but debt and babies, that's not God's way. When God's hand is on the union, when God's hand is on your life, when God's hand is on something, it will bear fruit. Look at the marriages and relationships around you. Most of them are not breeding anything bigger than them other than babies and debt. And that's the truth. Yeah, we're called to be fruitful and multiply, but that ain't it. That ain't it. And sometimes we simply ran off and left God, and God understands that. Am I advocating for divorce? No. But am I telling you that sometimes if you did it, then sometimes you got to undo it? That's the truth. It's the truth. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. That's when he'll say, oh, no. You decided you want to leave her. And I told you that was who, because when God say this is your mate, this is your mate. When God say that's your mate, when God say Jeremy, Amy is your mate, and Amy decide that Peter is her mate, God said, I don't see Peter, I see Jeremy, so that's adultery. I said Jeremy. Anything other than Jeremy is adultery. I don't care what y'all go through. I said Jeremy. Sometimes there will be a time where a person will even because the Bible says you have grounds, like if a person cheats or if they leave, you are free, right? But there are times when the person will cheat and God will still tell you to stay. Now he ain't gonna tell you to stay and they're gonna keep cheating because he will deal with them, baby. I'm talking about afflict them. He will. Y'all see that? He will afflict them. I'm telling you, like nobody's business. He's not gonna tell you to stay somewhere where you can keep getting abused. You can keep getting hurt. No, that other person, he said, I got it. But there are times when he'll tell you to even stay. Why? Because I joined this together. It ain't no part unless he take one of y'all up out of here. But then there are times when you joined you together and he like, well, I ain't say you couldn't get out of that. He hate divorce, period. But he also hates sin. He also hate people he hate the fact that he hate that we run off and leave him. Yeah. And so sometimes, yeah, you end up getting a divorce. But baby, we should not be getting 60 divorces. Like, because at what point do we sit down and settle down and say, Lord, have your way? Have your way, Lord. You got 60 divorces. Why? Because you keep doing your own thing. You keep choosing for yourself. You didn't sit down and surrender. You didn't surrender and say, Lord, okay, have your way. Whatever you want from me is what I want from me. I surrender. I trust you. Right? How many divorces do it take for us to stop and say, I trust you, Lord? Do what you will. Right? Because that's where we should be. Prune me. Fix me so that I'm ready for who you bring. So, yeah, that's where we are. But ultimately, it's impacting the families. All of this is impacting the families. And we're just going around and about and acting like we don't have to change nothing. And I'm telling you, you're going to change one way or the other. You're going to change either with the wave, you're going to change with what things are happening. I'm not telling you got to compromise to change. You don't always have to compromise your dignity, compromise your beliefs to change. You don't. But either you're going to change with the world, meaning incorporating some technology and some things or whatever, just pivot, or you're going to change because ain't nobody showing up. And a lot of families now can't get a quota. Why? Because we told you we don't want that. We told you we don't want to do that. We told you. And so now we'll go to somebody else's family stuff that's embracing the times. So again, you don't have to change. Don't mean that you have to adopt something that you personally don't believe in. It's not it. I remember the first time my family used to want to always, have a whole beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes at the family function. Hey, look, nah, how you gonna eat all that and have fun? You gonna eat that and have itis, right? And be sleep out on the picnic, out on the little. You gonna be put a blanket out and have to go to sleep, right? And so I remember the first time I proposed that we just have stuff light so that we can run and play. You know what I'm saying? I was like, let's as adults, let's have a ball, right? And I mean, we had the aunties was in the pillow sacks racing. They done failed. They still trying to win. Go ahead, go. And we had so much fun just making a change. It didn't offend nobody. You know what I'm saying? That change didn't change nobody's religion. It didn't change your spirituality. We just don't have to have macaroni and cheese, greens, baked beans. We don't have to have all that at the picnic in the summer. It's hot. Get you a hot dog and come on back to the race. Get you a sausage and come on back over here. Get you some chips and come on back and you know what I'm saying? We do egg races and all type of stuff. Be open to pivoting. Be open to various communication tactics. Why? Because the way you communicate to a boomer or a builder is not the way you're going to communicate to a Gen Y or Gen Z. It's just not. And until we embrace these differences, we're going to continue to have 47% of reunions that don't happen. And so I hope this has been helpful to you. I hope that, this will help some of the leaders to rethink some things, think about some things differently. All right. And I want you to have a great day. You already know how. And don't forget to join us in Woman to Woman, $9.99 for the first 50 women that join. So you should be going to get your cousins, your friends, your whoever, because we getting ready to tackle mother wounds and father wounds. And let me tell you, mother wounds, not just in the sense of what your mama did to you, but what about what you're doing to your kids? What about how to see mother wounds in a man? Because I promise you, if you see mother wounds in a man, you'll see some of the problems before they happen. You understand me? If you see some mother wounds in a man, you then can decide if I want to help him unpack that. But if you don't know what you're looking for, that's part of the problem. We get in it and we have 3 babies and now we realize he is a monster. I don't want to deal with him, right? And so this is what we're going to be talking about: mother wounds, father wounds, learning how to forgive. That's all of what we're talking about. $9.99 a month. You can't beat that. All right. So I love y'all. You're welcome. Somebody said thank you and have a blessed day. You're welcome. I thank y'all for tuning in, and I want you to have a great day. You already know how, on purpose. God bless you.